instrument on the solid body electric guitar. I chose this because it had, I started on acoustic, but I'd always been drawn more to the electric, especially solid bodies, because they had that great difference of tone within the styles. Like this is a Les Paul, for example, and it's always been the same shape since they were first released in the 50s. In saying that, there's many different shapes to the guitar. There's been the Fender Stratocaster, which was also in the 50s, and they're mainly made of all wood, except minus the hardware and the wiring. Body is standard, would be mahogany. I think this one is an oak body. Necks can vary in into different woods. This is a mahogany neck with a rosewood fretboard, but I know Fender mainly use a maple neck with a rosewood fretboard. With that, there's many different playing styles of some are specific to some guitars, and other guitars have been associated with certain genres. Like the Les Paul has been mainly associated with rock and blues. Like some of the most popular players would be like Slash, Jimmy Page, and John Lee Hooker for blues. With the Fender though, like Jimmy Page again also played Fender a lot, but off the top of my head, I think the Beatles would be the greatest example, with George Harrison being a great Fender Telecaster player, which was maple neck as well. But the pickups then, these are humbuckers, so there's 2 coils in, and as if you plug it into an amp, it tends to ring out, which is quite the name, it's hum. With most guitars when they first came out were all single coils, so you just have one set of these without obviously the 2 of them, but you get a very twangy or thin sound to them, so there's no real drive in the pickup. With the single coil pickups, they're very versatile, especially because most Fenders have a 5-way switch, whereas standard like Les Paul and your Gibsons have a 3-way. So it's your neck, both of them, and then your neck, both, and then your bridge. Whereas most Fenders will have 3, so you'll have your 3 single coils. So you'll have your bridge, then you'll have on the second select you'll have your bridge and your middle, and then you'll have your middle, then your middle and your neck, and then just your neck on its own. The Fender also became very popular later on in about the 60s to 70s within blues and Texas blues, because it was versatile for that Texan twang, and also it was very versatile because they realized it wasn't as hard to keep it quiet when they were doing intervals to shows and stuff, and that they hadn't plugged out. With your hardware for the top of your neck, this is a 3 and 3, so it's not inline 6 for your tuners. An inline 6, I find it's down to preference again, but inline 6 I find always goes out of tune, because again all the weight is on one side of the neck, and all the resistance is pulling back on the same side, whereas the 3 and 3 levels itself out, so it stays in tune a lot better. With your bridge then, this is a fixed bridge, so it's compared to a tremolo or a Bigsby system where there's no bar, or it doesn't float, so you can't get that nice wave effect out of it. But the fixed bridge always stays in tune. And with the tremolo though as well, the strings break a lot easier because dive bombs and pullbacks and stuff. And then some of the greatest techniques would have been would have started from blues with like this guitar, with these type of guitars. So like the Les Paul would have been a fairly prominent one with like your hammer-ons and your pull-offs, and then you had bands like Fleetwood Mac. So Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac wrote a song called "Oh Well." So he involved the pentatonic, which is that, but he just picked I think it was 4 notes from it in total, and then just added a couple of chords. But the whole song is just a pentatonic scale. But he plays it on a Les Paul in the recording. He has it on a clean noise first, and he hits I think it's an overdrive pedal or a boost pedal to give it just that extra bit of grunt to itself, which adds that like drive. So it's the difference between. So these are actually split pickups. So with split pickups as well, you can pull out the tops and it's like a lot cleaner. You push back in, you get a bit more boost. So it splits the humbuckers down to one single coil, which is, I find it's a lot handier with the guitar, because it saves you changing out guitars if you're looking for that single coil like noise that. But then like when you have like blues, you'd have certain key players like John Lee Hooker had this great track called "Boom Boom Boom," which was. So that song itself involves a lot of. It was more like because he doesn't use for the second G note. He doesn't actually play the chord. He just plays the note on a bend to bring it back to the E. So it goes. That was his style of playing. That was very like jumpy. It was and he always had like his hand resting just on the bridge, so it gave it a slightly muffled sound. And that's what most of his songs, you won't really notice it until you actually see him playing. But then from blues, you also kind of got like early rock and rolls like the Beatles, so like the. They would use I think it was George Harrison. He used a single coil, so it gave it that slightly lighter tone of. It gave it that slightly less aggressive tone, and then they got in when it like the drums kicked in as well. It like fully burst into this. Into like a full swing of song, but the difference in the single coil is really noticeable when there's not like. I think John Lennon was playing a Rickenbacker with it had humbuckers in it, which he'd switched out, and it gave him that beef, that kind of like